MAWOCC is pleased to have as our MC today, award-winning Boston 25 News reporter, Crystal Haynes, who hails from Springfield, Massachusetts. An adventurous at heart, Haynes' career affords her the opportunity to discover new explorations daily. Her journalistic training allows her to share news and feature stories that are credible, relevant, and moving. She has earned several awards for her reporting, including a coveted Emmy. A graduate of Emerson College, Haynes has worked at WGGB TV in Springfield, WTNH TV in New Haven, Connecticut. She's been at Boston 25 since 2011. Please welcome our MC for the afternoon, Crystal Haynes.
Hello, everyone. How are you? I'm very excited to have, to be a part of this particular meeting. I've been in the Boston market for over 10 years and certainly have been here in Massachusetts almost my entire career, except for that short amount of time in Connecticut. So I'm very excited to be a part of today's program. So we have a land acknowledgement here, and I'm going to go ahead and roll into that. We collectively acknowledge that Indigenous people have lived in Massachusetts for the past 12,000 or more years, and that the entire region of Massachusetts occupies the ancestral, traditional, and contemporary lands of the First Peoples nations, tribes, and descendants. MAWOCC honors the home of the Nipmuc peoples whose territory our headquarters stands on, and we recognize, support, and affirm the culture and sovereignty of all Massachusetts Indigenous communities. And now for our annual report, here is Celia Johnston Blue, CEO and President, visionary and founding board member here. Hi, Celia.
Hi, Crystal. Thank you so much. Can everyone hear me? Okay, fantastic. I'm going to try to go right into our presentation today. I know we have a tight schedule and we have an exciting program lined up for you today. Thank you for those that are here with us. The one nice thing about doing this virtual, though I miss the in-person, at least we don't have to deal with the storm so much. Well, I mean, people are having issues with electricity and everything else, but thank you again for making the time to be with us today. So I have an annual report. What we normally do is I report out what we've done over the last year and where we're heading. And this is really an exciting time for us. And I have some news to share with you that I hope you'll be as thrilled as we are to be involved in doing this work. So let me try to get to my presentation here, and I have, let's see if it will allow me to. Can you all see that? Yep. Okay. I'm gonna move you over just a bit. As most of you know, that we are really focused on addressing systemic and institutional racism. We've got this all on our website in terms of our mission. We're really envisioning the Commonwealth to be authentic and inclusive, where racism and sexism no longer dictates the outcomes for women of color and our communities of color. And we are really working hard towards realizing that vision. Quickly, our run of show today is we've done the welcome. I'm going to do the annual report, introduction of our keynote speaker, who is NC. And I don't want to say her last name because I think I'm not going to pronounce it correctly, but I think Crystal got that for you later, who I'm very excited to be here with us today for her to share the work that she's doing in the New Georgia Project. We have a Q&A session team lined up after that, where you will get an opportunity to ask some questions. We're excited to honor some of our MAWOCC members today in the public health area that's on the front lines, dealing with COVID and dealing and navigating the challenges there and helping us as a community. And then we've got some recognition for our donors and sponsors, and our advisory board chair, Charlotte Gola-Ritchie, will then close us out and call us to action. Before I go on, I do want to acknowledge our board members. And I do want to take a quick moment, a brief moment of silence. Our board member, Azelle Kavan, who was going to do the intro for us today, her dad passed away this morning and is not able to be with us. And I just want to take a quick moment of silence for them. I also want to recognize the rest of our current board, and I'll go through the list, and I think Jesse maybe just spotlighting as we quickly run through. We have our starting with we call our Wild West region in the western part of the state. Denise Jordan, who's vice president of our western region. I'm not sure if she was able to log on yet, but if she's here, she is one of our board members from the western region. There she is.
I'm here. Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for joining us. Greetings from the Wild West.
And we have Gladys Oyola. I'm not sure if she's with us, but Gladys, are you here with us? Welcome. We have Waleska Lugo de Husas, who unfortunately is at a wake this morning, or funeral. And then we've got Maria Rivera Cotto, our general counsel and vice president of the Central Region, who did the intro for us impromptu today. Thank you, Maria. And Brenda Jenkins, who is a co-visionary with me of, as we say, the movement and founding member, and she's also the platform chair of our health and wellness platform. Brenda Jenkins.
Welcome to everyone.
And then we've got Jean Morrison from our Eastern region is with us. And I know she's having some power issues there on the Cape. There she is.
I'm here. Welcome, everyone.
Right. And then Jemalee D. Pasquale, who's from our treasurer and from our Central region. And I think I have gotten everyone. Did I forget anyone? No. Got everyone.
As board members, or what do you?
Or just board members, yeah. And then I do want to quickly acknowledge that we do have our advisory board members here with us today as well. Jesse, not sure. I'm going to start first with our chair, and I don't have my list in front of me. Charlotte Goler Ritchie, who is our chair and co-founder. Well, there she is, and I will try to get to my list here. We have Mary Fernandez, who is a founding member of MAWOCC and a co-founder of our advisory board. All right, and then we have Dr. Lori Nasaya Jefferson, who is the head of the, I'm sharing because I want to get to their names here, who is head of the Center for Women in Politics and Public Policy. And we have Linda Cavioli, who's the former head of the YWCA in Central Mass. She is a longtime partner and supporter of MAWOCC. Magnolia Contreras, don't know if you're here with us today, Magnolia. Zoe Harris. There she is. And Zoe, I know I saw Zoe earlier. And Tahera Amatal Wadud. Colette Phillips. Wilnelia Rivera. Pat Washington, and Vera Dominique Cage is with us, I think, today. So just wanted to recognize those folks, and I'm gonna just stop sharing for a moment and I get back to my presentation. Thank you all again for your time and your energy that you have certainly bestowed upon us, and it is greatly appreciated. Let me get out of this now and get to my presentation. There we go. Can you guys see that?
No, I don't see it, Celia.
Let me pull it back up. How about now? Okay, perfect.
Yes.
Okay. So just in terms of how we're organized, as I mentioned to you, we have 3 regions: Western, Central, and Eastern. Our structure is that we're statewide. We have board members across the state, as well as we have certainly regional platform volunteer positions, and we're always looking for volunteers and millennial leader positions to help us do the work. I'm going to get right into our finances. As you know, we are a grassroots organization. We're going into our 7th year. And for the first time, we almost broke 100,000 last year, where we got to about $96,000 in revenue and our expenses. And so we're very, we operate in very slim budget here, as they say, shoestring budget. We were very fortunate last year to get a commitment for $160,000 from the Cataly Foundation, who is funding our Healing to Lead program. And they have given us $80,000 already to start this work. And I'll talk a little bit about that later on. We also were able to get a donation in from the Episcopal City Mission and the ES Foundation, which we're very thankful for. We're going to get right into our goals of what we set out to do last year. Most of them we've accomplished. We haven't accomplished all, but we're thrilled about the work we've done so far. We wanted to finish out our 501(c)(3) process, and hired our goal last year was to hire an attorney and to get us to that space. Our YWCA Central Mass has been our fiscal agent for almost over 5 years and has been a strong partner, but it was always our goal to become independent and finish out that process. We wanted to launch and build our partnership with the Mass Treasurer's Office, or the Office of Economic Empowerment, create and build and launch our MAWOCC Advisory Board, which, as you've heard, we've done that. And thanks to the leadership of Charlotte and Mary, who worked very closely with me on that. And we had a Women's History Month we had committed to doing, develop a sustainability plan, which started out with our strategic plan, which goes to growth and fundraising, and we wanted to resume our regional meetings. We were not able to resume our regional meetings this year, and that is on the table for this year. We focused on 3 of our major platforms: political and civic leadership, economic power and sustainability, health and wellness. We wanted to try to get a symposium done under a criminal justice program. We did not get that in this year, but we are excited about the work that we've done on the other platforms that I will be sharing with you. Big news for us is that we did get our 501(c)(3), woohoo, which is a great thing for us. We got the news early in December, and we're in the process of transitioning from our fiscal agent at this moment. We also do have, the board has approved MAWOCC Action Fund, which that's our C4, which will be our lobbying arm. And that's something we will look to do in the near future. And we, as I said, wanted to create and build our advisory board, which we've already done, which we did do last year. In terms of platform goals, I just think it's really important to just go over, particularly the political area. This is our strongest platform, and the one we knew that we wanted to put out the gate, be very involved in. And our goal is around increasing women of color hired, appointed, and elected as officials in senior levels, positions in state government, including boards and commissions. We'll talk a little bit about that. That's why it's highlighted. And then to develop and support system for existing and new women of color leaders that are going into these positions that are hired, appointed, or elected. Increase our voter registration, education, and turnout, and then continue to mentor and build a talented membership base, which is also building our communities to be more civically engaged. We also had some, we partnered with the Center for Women in Politics and Public Policy out of UMass Boston, and we had a goal to conclude and launch the Women of Color Elected Official Profiles. The Center for Women Politics and Public Policy is the author and the publisher of that. I think that's one of the only published publication that is collected. And this year, we also included municipality leaders. We are also continuing our lobbying for the, our advocacy, I should say, not lobbying, for the Parity on Board Coalition, which I have, and I think Jean can probably give us an update in a moment, but we had made some good strides on that this year. And then to continue around vote in leader and a broader statewide collaboration around voter, getting the vote out, and also civic leadership. We published the Women of Color elected officials in May of last year, and Dr. Lori Nasaya Jefferson and her team did a fantastic job in pulling all that data together. So that's a goal we definitely accomplished last year and are very proud of. Getting into the voting range, we also voting and civic engagement. We are also committed to putting on different forums, candidates forums, so that our communities can be more educated about who's running and what their values are. What do they care about? Do they line up with their own? And so we've done quite a few forums across the state. Last year, we partnered with the YWCA, who led this for the Worcester Candidates Forum, both the City Council and School Committee. And I have to say that Worcester made history this year with the most diverse candidates ever in the history of the city. And it's nice to be a part of that movement to help with that. And we partnered with several other organizations, as you can see. NAACP as well of Worcester was one of our partners, the League, Lyon was, and we also did candidates forums, Cape and Islands, Hyannis. Jean is also involved with the League of Women Voters on the Cape Cod Times. The NAACP was also in the mix. And we also did the Boston Mayoral Primary Candidates Forum, which was very successful last year. And we partnered with many organizations also to put that on. And we also have been working with the Massachusetts Voter Table to on the Getting Out the Vote partnership. We're thrilled that the Boston Globe was our media partner with this. I think we had over 400 people registered and over 200 attended, which was very successful. And we have all of our partners there that we partnered with for that event. And we will recognize our partners a bit later on as well. And then I talked about our ongoing advocacy and collaboration, which the YWCA of Boston is leading. 21 organizations, if not more, have signed up. We are part of the steering committee for that. This did make it out of committee this year. And I don't know, Jean, do you want to just give a quick, where are we on that bill, that legislation?
Yes, the bill was reported favorably in both the Senate and the House, and is now in Ways and Means. And it does need some more support to hear from people. Right now, the focus is on contacting your senator and advocating for the bill.
There you go. And really, this is about making sure that we have the representation of our communities represented. If you believe it or not, there's really, well, I'm sure you believe it, there just is not enough representation for people of color, particularly women of color, which of course we're very biased about that. Over the last 2 years with just the EOS Foundation and benchmarking, you know, what has happened in its 50 large boards, there's been zero gains for women of color. So it is very important. Only one other state in this country has similar legislation. Ours would be a little bit different in that we are fighting to keep the language in that's specific around women of color, because we feel that is necessary. And so we have also sent out sort of talking points, if you will, to call your senators, and we will do that again this hopefully by early next week. But if you can also advocate for this, I think this is very important. We did some informational sessions as well. I think we did about 4 sessions last year, partnering with other organizations. We're also partnering organization on the Votes Act bill. And lots of you should have seen lots of activities over the last week or two that we've sent out to call your legislatures to get that, to move on that bill. And also the wage transparency bill is another bill that we are advocating for as well. We did in order to sort of highlight the boards and commission piece, we did a Women's History Month focus on that, partnering with the YWCA of Boston and the Massachusetts Commission on the Status of Women. We also have a new partnership with Councilor Mejia out of Boston, who is one of the key founding member of the Political Lab. And we had some candidates actually that won this year who went through our first pilot cohort early last year. And basically what, again, goes back to this goal of building a bench, you know, making sure that we are training and providing the experience of what it takes to run for office, and also campaign manager, all the things that we need to be successful. And we are doing our second cohort actually right as we speak, this over the next couple of months. With regards to our economic power and sustainability platform, we're focusing on 3 areas: increased financial literacy, equal pay and pay equity, increased asset and wealth building. We did not really get to do anything around the asset wealth building last year, but we certainly, and the literacy piece, but we did have a lot of activities around the equal pay and pay equity, thanks to our partnership with the Treasurer's Office, the Office of Economic Empowerment, where we did a series of roundtable focused on really diverse voices around pay equity. Money Talk Tuesday, and as I mentioned, we've got the wage equity stuff bill that we are focusing, we are advocating for, as well as one of the organizations. And just to give you a sense, when I say diverse voices, the first one of the sessions was supposed to focus on Asian American and Pacific Island, equal pay conversation, the Latinas equal pay. We had Black women's equal pay, LGBTQ, just all kinds of really looking at this at many different angles, and really having the conversation about what's important and what we're learning, and what we need to do to continue to advocate for pay equity, particularly for women and women of color. With regards to our health and wellness platform, our goals were coming out of the meeting last year was to educate, bring awareness around COVID-19 and vaccines, particularly on women of color and our communities of color. We had a community outreach project with the UMass Memorial, City of Worcester, and Health that's funded by the Health Foundation of Central Mass. We did a project with them around that. We also wanted to bring more awareness and research on mental health among women of color to provide cultural sensitivity, information on care delivery, which also includes substance abuse. And we really want to get into investing around data systems and collections. We know that the way that the data is collected is not necessarily the way that really bears fruit, especially for diverse communities, in particular women of color. And while we didn't get to work on that piece last year, it's still important. It's something we're going to be certainly looking to do this year and the following year. We did a forum around vaccination and really making sure that people had the facts. We had 2 medical students, Jordan Dudley and Cassandra Jean Marie, who worked with Brenda Jenkins, our platform chair. And we're also blessed with Dr. Sarah Perez McAdoo, who is their mentor and also affiliated with MAWOCC through the Wild Wild West region, also participated with us. And we had a great conversation about sharing the facts and some of the trepidation that our communities have, especially communities of color, which is real, on why folks are not getting vaccinated. And we want them to know the facts and make that informed decision. Goals continuing on, we did one of our Healing to Lead session, which is really about focusing on us because of our journey in this world. We know that our walk of life is different than our white counterparts. We go through a lot of different traumas, and this is a way of talking through our experience in a safe space with each other and learning strategies to be able to then refresh and lead. We have some new partners that we took on this year. The conference for the Massachusetts Conference for Women is one of our key partners this year. We partnered with them around the conference and some different career fairs. We also partnered with the Esler Family Foundation, who did a conversation with Heather McGee in her book around the cost of racism. And as you can see, many other organizations joined forces to be a part of that here in Worcester and Central Mass. So what's on the horizon for us in terms of next chapter? We're going to say 2022 to 2025. We want to develop a sustainability plan, which really starts out with a strategic plan, which we have completed. And part of that is also to develop the case for pursuing funding opportunities and really look at how we're going to develop long-term revenue streams. We are going to, we've started to raise some funds to really, we know that the demand and the capacity, the demand is there for the work that we're doing and for our organization, and the capacity, we're at the point now where we need to build capacity. And so we will, the board, we've made a decision that we are going to raise some funds to have full-time staff. That is really the next chapter in the phase for us, and that we really need to build the infrastructure and program in so that we can evolve into this global organization that we one day will be. And we're starting off in the grassroots space at this point. One of the, really big exciting news for us with regards to our next step is regards to the Esler Family Foundation, with us moving forward with beginning our fundraising to have full-time staff. We're really honored and proud to publicly announce today that the Esler Family Foundation has committed to donating $500,000 over the next 3 years. And year one, $250,000 to support our operations, and having a full-time CEO to start the work in building our infrastructure and doing the things I just talked about in terms of revenue stream, putting in the right things that we need to do to evolve as a organization that's a premier organization for women of color and girls of color. So we're really excited. And I think they're here with us today. If we can spotlight Jean and John Esler, I'm gonna spotlight them for a moment before I continue on. And I promise you I'm almost done so we can get to hear from NC. There's Jean and John Esler. Thank you for being here with us today. And the other part of this news is that Celia Blue will now become the full-time CEO of MAWOCC, thanks to this funding and the board recognizing that it's time for us to move into this direction, and a really, really huge step for us right now. A lot of work to be done, don't get me wrong, we're just getting started, but to be able to focus full-time on MAWOCC and get it where it needs to be over the next 3 years, I'm certainly committed to doing this work and this role, and hopefully be able to have a successor in year 3 for us to continue to evolve as an organization. So we are super excited and to share this news with you all today, and more to come there for sure. So what does this mean for us in terms of our next chapter? We want to raise 1.5 to 200 million to $2 million, not 200 million, for 4 full-time staff, infrastructure work, website. We've got to redo our website, database, software, all the things that we need to do, the unsexy work behind the scenes that we need to do to make sure that we are a viable organization as we evolve, program support, member cultivation. One of the things that will be on my radar to do that I'll focus on is around creating a plan to increase volunteer and membership engagement, which will involve, and a public affairs plan, which we have not done yet, to really market our organization as a premier organization for women of color and girls of color. We start in 9th grade, and there is some cultivation work that we need to do. We launched those membership engagement years ago, but we need to get back to that. And then our Healing to Lead program, as I mentioned before, we got funding for that. We will be doing some work around that as well. And in parallel, we're still going to be focusing on, these platforms, right? We've got some partnerships opportunities that we need to continue to build with the Economic Office of Empowerment. There's a new series about worth and wealth seminars, which will get to our financial literacy goal, as well as our asset and wealth goal that we did not get to this year, or political lab around cultivating leaders. Expanding our partnership with the Center for Women in Public Policy, in that Dr. Lori Nasaya Jefferson is leading, and we are talking about parity board trading right now, because part of this is, if we are recruiting you to be on the boards and commissions, we want to make sure that you have the training, you have the tools to be able to successfully navigate those roles, especially when you're one of few or one of the only one on these boards. It does get a little bit daunting. We want to make sure that we build a real world experience program that's speaks to that. She's also committed to helping us around our Leadership Academy, which is something is in a conceptual stage. And Massachusetts Voter Table, we've been working with Beth Hong and her team, and we are going to be talking about how we can even work more together. And then we're also exploring some potential partnerships with Groundwork Project, also the University of Vermont, who we have been in touch with for a while now. We're looking at a certificate program that could be branded with partnership with MAWOCC. So lots going on still there that we'll be focusing on. And I mentioned our Healing to Lead. We'll be doing 3 sessions this year, 1 in each region. We will get an opportunity as a board to pause and reflect, and we'll do a short retreat in the summer that the Catholic Foundation has helped us to be able to do. And so we're really thrilled to say that with the commitment of the Esler Foundation, we are on our way, and encourage you all to donate to us today or in the near future as we move forward to realize our goals and getting some full-time employees to support the work. So that brings me through to my presentation. A little bit, try to whip through this as quickly as possible so we can get back on track to hear our keynote speaker. So with that, that concludes my presentation, my report out today. And I'll turn this back over to Crystal Haynes.
Hi, everyone. That's such exciting news. I can read all of the comments. I can read all of the comments that are in the chat here. Very exciting news to hear everything that you guys have coming up. And it is my pleasure to introduce our keynote speaker for this afternoon. Ensé Ufuk is the Chief Executive Officer of the New Georgia Project and its affiliate, New Georgia Project Action Fund. Ensé leads both organizations with a data-informed approach and a commitment to developing tools that leverage technology to make it easier for every voter to engage in every election. Ensé and her team are also developing Georgia's new homegrown talent by training and organizing local activists across the state. Ensé has dedicated her life and career to working on civil, human, and workers' rights issues, and leads 2 organizations whose complementary aim is to strengthen Georgia's democracy. Under her leadership, NGP has registered over 500,000 Georgians to vote. And we're certainly inspired not only by her introduction, but by all of the work that she has done in Georgia. Ensé, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Crystal. It is really a pleasure to be with you all this afternoon. And I want to thank MAWOCC for the incredible work that you are doing to strengthen our democracy and make it more representative, but also thank you for the invitation today. I will start with acknowledging the incredible work of the women who've come before me, and specifically those leaders here in Massachusetts. And so wanting to first thank and shout out Brenda Jenkins and Celia J. Blue, founders of the Massachusetts Women of Color Coalition, where Celia Blue serves as the CEO and president today. Kimberly S. Budd, the Chief Justice of the Massachusetts Supreme Court and a powerful Black woman. Sambal Siddiqui, a Pakistani American and the mayor of Cambridge. Congresswoman Ayanna Pressley, who exemplifies the intellectual heft that is so often lacking in the halls of Congress. And finally, the new mayor of Boston, Massachusetts, our sister in the movement, Michelle Wu. These are only a few of the extraordinary women of your state and this country. And for each name that gets mentioned in speeches like this, there are millions more who are equally deserving, who I hope get the shine that they deserve, that we support them and that we lift them up whenever there's an opportunity to. And so, yes, thank you very much for allowing me to join you today for this very important conversation. I often get asked sort of what is for my thoughts or my opinions on the state of American democracy, the state of sort of Black voters of color, and their thoughts, attitudes, opinions about how our country is functioning. And oftentimes when I hear folks answer that question, I'm always amazed about how the responses get framed. To some, there are hours of public commentary that have led them to believe that we should be losing hope and sleep about the direction of power, the amassment of power and who has it in our country. And to others, there have been a few successes in previous election cycles that have them convinced that we can embrace the thrill of victory. And I'm here today to tell you why it's important for us to see this moment for what it truly is. And another battle in a continuous struggle that is far from over, a battle to realize or to close the gap between the rhetoric around American democracy and the reality of American democracy as it is experienced by working people, women, young people, new Americans, and people of color. Recently, an interviewer asked me and said, when do you sit back and say, we did it? And I answered, I haven't. That this isn't the time for us to pat ourselves on the back, that if we catch a glimpse of what's happening in Texas right now and in Georgia and in Wisconsin, you'll see that there's still much, much, much more work to do. I'm also here to let you in on a little secret that our analysis of American politics has been far too shallow. I'm convinced that many of us have an underlying misconception about what is really happening in our political struggle. We're intent on dividing the country into the binary of red states and blue states, winnable and unwinnable, possible and impossible, but there's so much more for us to understand. And our framing is shaped by what we've been forced to see by the hands of a pale, male, stale minority that has had an outsized influence on our politics for far too long. If you peel back the layers just a little bit, you'll see that elections have been determined by who shows up, yes, but also whose votes get counted. And there is a very real, very active battle to make sure that we make progress in ensuring fairness and equity on both of those fronts. And I'll talk a little bit about the work of the New Georgia Project towards those two aims. I'm also here to tell you that I see something different. I see something different for us. I represent a multiracial, multi-generational, multilingual movement of real people who are committed to representing our concerns in a way that we talk about our political reality. At the New Georgia Project, we've witnessed firsthand what we can do when we show up organized, motivated, and armed with the best data and the best strategy to turn out a winning majority. This pale, male, stale minority no longer needs to control every element of our political narrative, but they have not and will not take this reality lying down. Yes, on January 5th, we accomplished something monumental in Georgia. After millions of calls, millions of texts, millions of doors knocked, and millions of dollars raised, and I will flag that the Warnock and Ossoff races were respectively the most expensive congressional races in the history of American politics, right? And so that was historic. It was monumental. And the result was that we sent Georgia's first African-American and first Jewish man to the United States Senate. And the next day, on January 6th, Trump-loving malcontents stormed the Capitol with weapons intent on causing harm to our elected officials, including a failed murder plot that targeted the Vice President of the United States. I don't believe that January's 5th progress is a sign that the fight for creating a better America has been completed. Nor do I believe that the January 6th violent response means that there's no hope. The answer lies in where we put our focus. This is a struggle, this is a fight, but it's also more than that. We're in the middle of a collective struggle for power. And I think that this struggle has been filled with setbacks and progress. I think it's also really important that, again, we be really disciplined and really honest in how we talk, again, about the reality of American democracy, because the truth of the matter is that every win that we have made, all of the progress that we have made has been the result of an organized demand from the people that are directly impacted. When we think about Abraham Lincoln as the President of the United States needing to be pushed towards emancipation, when we think about the 19th Amendment passing and decades of women organizing to push for women's suffrage. When we think about the Voting Rights Act of 1965 that was passed 45 years later after the 19th Amendment, Lyndon Baines Johnson was forced by civil rights activists to do what was necessary to make sure that the reality of American democracy was reflected, or the rhetoric of American democracy was reflected in our reality. But what's also important for us to be mindful about is that every single step towards progress that we've made has been met with a corresponding backlash or a corresponding white lash. And so this time, this moment that we're in is no different. With all that was gained through the 2020 elections and the runoffs, we also were met with not only the January 6th insurrection, but 400 anti-voting bills that have been introduced in 49 out of our 50 states. They have passed in 19 states. That this is a direct response to the gains that have been made in our multiracial democracy. And so we need to be mindful of that and be prepared for that. That needs to come, work its way into our plans, our strategies, our communications plans, our field plans, our fundraising plans. In a similar way, there is constant hand-wringing and anxiety over the rise of wannabe dictators and authoritarian leaders, both in this country and around the globe. But again, it's not a sign that we're losing this fight. It's actually, it is a response to the wins, to the gains that we are making. We should have a 360 view about what is happening in this world, because there are women, young people, queer folks, and poor people all around the US and the globe who are standing up right now to say no more. So just as we're seeing the rise in wannabe authoritarians, wannabe dictators, we are also seeing mass movements, people-powered movements in the US and across the globe that are meeting them and holding the line. And I'm here to tell you that I'm happy to be in community with you all, because we are the ones that are figuring it out, learning and developing a new vocabulary about how to think about life, our community, our democracy, our country. And because framing is almost everything, we like to think of this work as if it is a sporting event with clear-cut wins and losses. But setbacks are not failures, and progress is not always an ultimate victory. This work will cause us to take 2 steps forward and 1 step back, and that's okay. One of my favorite Bible verses tells us not to grow weary in our well-doing, for in due season we shall reap a bountiful harvest if we faint not. That is good, practical advice for those of us who are committing ourselves to the fight for better representation, better laws, and a better country by trying to affect who we send to office. Undoubtedly, there are times when we question the worth of our efforts, or if we consider our ability to actualize the changes we know we need for our families and our communities. In these challenging moments, I find encouragement and my second wins in the prayer of Dr. King, who reminded us that the arc of the moral universe is long, but that it bends towards justice. It's funny too, because oftentimes when I hear that quote, people tend to then go on and riff about the work that is being done to bend the arc, right? What are you doing? What is being done to bend the arc of the moral universe towards justice, right? Towards liberation, towards freedom. I tend to focus on the fact that the arc of the moral universe is long. It is very long. Again, when you think about what was won, we just celebrated the centennial in 2020 of the 19th Amendment passing that granted white women the right to vote. But then there was an additional 45 years of organizing before we guaranteed and secured the right for women of color to vote, right? And there are several examples, right, of those of us who are putting in work, organizing, campaign, fighting for a better America that won't actually get to see the ultimate victory. And yet we thank those veterans, we thank those ancestors for moving the ball forward and moving it down the field. And I think that that's so important for us to be mindful that change takes a long time, sometimes too long, but it does happen. And I am a witness. It happens through individual advocacy, sometimes by reforming policy, sometimes because the time is right. Each of us working for social change who's committed to a fairer, better world in our lifetime is a part of the mosaic of all who work for justice. Together we can and will accomplish so much for those we are blessed to serve and advocate for and with. In the mid-1900s, First Lady Hillary Clinton led the charge for universal health care. In the mid-1990s. At that time, many American families were going bankrupt due to medical bills. Almost every poll conducted at the time told political experts that the populace desired universal health care. Yet the influence of the pale male stale power structure made people feel a sense of shame in admitting what they wanted in the public. There are Americans who felt like because they were saddled with medical debt, that was somehow a moral failure or a deficiency in their character. When the truth is that there was a for-profit medical system that is connected to our electoral system, our governance, that is intent on not seeing universal healthcare happen. And when that vote failed, it was a momentary setback, but the fight did not end there. The push for this new reality continued a decade later when Barack Obama occupied the White House. Despite the insurance companies who made an extraordinary amount of profit from seeking to block this effort, a people-powered movement gave a mandate to the president to change our healthcare system. And with the Affordable Care Act, we received some of what we've been fighting long and hard for. Extraordinary pressure, tireless and disciplined organization changed the way our country approached healthcare. The losses in the 90s were not fatal. The fight continued. And we realized that there's a clarity that comes from losing and losing better each time. And if something is so important to all of us, we should speak with one collective voice and never take a setback as a mortal loss. This is why it's important for us to see this moment as a moment, a point in time in the middle of the struggle. We cannot and must not become too entrenched in the perception of victory for progressives in 2022, or daunted by the recent scourge of regressive election reforms by Republican legislatures and governors. This moment calls for us to become better organized and oriented to the state of play in our country. We need different tools for this new battle, different actors on this new stage. Our social movements, led by ordinary people, are mounting effective resistance against these bad actors who have increasingly more sway on those of our neighbors committed to making their America great again for them. So we fight, armed with savvy, armed with strategy, resources, the best data, and a commitment to organizing with the forgotten and the left behind into a powerful winning constituency. When we think about where we should be putting our time, our energy, our money, we absolutely should also think about how we add muscle to these people-powered social movements that are rising in the US and across the globe. Our response is to break the machinery of how votes are cast and counted to achieve a more equitable process and better representation, like the Movement for Black Lives, the New Georgia Project, MAWOCC, and dozens of other coalitions across the country committed to incredible acts of love and service that empower this movement, and we must do it together. The unavoidable fact is this: with consistent pressure and organizing power, America will be forced to have people in power who will reflect all of our communities. The America of the future is going to require us to bring more voices to the table, our voices, our stories, our fears, our hopes, and our dreams for our communities and our children and ourselves. I subscribe to the gospel choir theory of change. When you see the Georgia Mass Choir singing with angelic voices, folks are often blown away by their capacity, their ability to hold notes beyond what they should be able to. But they're able to do more than what they could imagine because they do it together. Each section, each vocalist is doing their part. And when an individual vocalist needs to drop out to take a breath, guess what? The note continues. And that is how we see our work. When we are in this work, it's not based upon one person or one voice or one organization. It is based upon the collective movement and our collective power. When one drops out to care for themselves or because they're competing professional or personal obligations, the song will continue. But we must sing together with each person committed to doing their part. That is what sustains us towards actual change, the meaningful, radical change that addresses problems at their roots. Nipsey Hussle said it best: the marathon continues, and each of us has to be committed to running our race for as long and as hard as we possibly can. Simultaneously, we must rise up and empower those who will take the baton from us and continue their race, our race, that this is a multi-generational effort. I leave you today with a challenge, and that is to go and find your people, to coalesce with those who are similarly rooted in the fight for progressive change, even if there are moments of disharmony and doubt. Join an organization, give to a coalition, join others in developing a strategy, get active, but do something. The person that you are waiting on is you. In the words of Margaret Mead, never doubt that a small group of thoughtful, committed citizens can change the world, because indeed it is the only thing that ever has. And I thank you.
Thank you so. All right. Well, thank you so much, Ense. Those were inspiring words. And I know that our audience and the folks who are at this meeting have a few questions for you. So I want to start with Kendra from the Massachusetts voter table. She says, hello, Ense. As an organizer who moved to Georgia to work on the Senate runoff, this was incredibly moving and a reminder of the importance of collective work. I would love to hear from your perspective on the importance of organizing in between election cycles to prepare communities for participation.
Well, first of all, thank you for coming to Georgia, Kendra. Your efforts clearly were needed. And so I thank you for that. And I also thank you for this question. It is literally, key to our wins and key to our theory of change. I think that oftentimes political actors, sort of operatives, think about voters in two buckets. They think about like persuasion voters, and they think about mobilization voters, right? So the persuasion voters are where often the bulk of resources are committed, right? These are people that they feel are swing voters that need to be convinced about a candidate's particular platform and whether or not they are aligned with them. Folks often invest in knowing the papers that they read, the blogs that they read, the podcasts that they listen to, and investing in polling and research and focus groups and how to communicate to them. And then there are mobilization voters. And oftentimes when I think about how Black voters are considered or treated, or young voters in particular, they are often seen as a mobilization universe. And so what that means is, around Halloween, or maybe a little bit earlier, we'll say Labor Day. Around Labor Day, they will start saying, without doing any of the work, right, to assess the state of play, to assess the health of the elections infrastructure, they pull up and say, hey, it's time to vote for a Democrat, or, vote for whomever. And so when I think about the work of the New Georgia Project, I jokingly say that we are like a tech startup inside of a civil rights and a voting rights organization. And what I mean by that is everything that we do is informed by data. The way that we train our organizers is that you have twice as many ears as you do mouths. And so we spend the bulk of our time listening, asking Georgians what they care about, asking them what their priorities are, asking them what they will move for, what they will get up and get out in the streets, get up and show up at city council elections, what will move you to action. And that is constantly changing. I'll give a little bit of an example. Throughout 2020, because of, again, our organizing campaigns, we were checking in, doing sort of wellness checks in communities, participating in mutual aid societies, but always with an eye towards November. And there was no doubt through our polling, our focus groups, our direct conversations, that the number one issue on voters' minds, on Georgia voters' minds in 2020, headed into the November election, was COVID. COVID. The only differences that we saw were gendered. So it was 100% COVID for women and femmes and people who identify that way, but it was COVID as a healthcare issue. How do I keep myself safe? How do I keep my family safe? How do I not die with these leaders who have abandoned us? And again, in Georgia, it's a particularly unique situation because of our governor who chose to traffic in misinformation and disinformation about COVID, despite the fact that he's the only governor in the US who lives and works within 5 miles of the CDC's headquarters, right? For men, it was COVID as an economic issue, right? So there was massive job loss and there was a lot of economic anxiety, but COVID was the number one issue. So when we headed into the runoffs, like that, it was, you know, days after the election, like obviously we're going to continue with that message because it worked, because it was successful. We saw the results, but we weren't getting any traction. We were going and knocking on doors and people were like, baby, I already voted. And we're like, I know, that's why we're here. We are here because there's a runoff election and there's an opportunity to change the balance of power in the United States Senate. But at the time, we're talking about after the November election, there was Thanksgiving, there was Christmas, there was Hanukkah, there was Kwanzaa, there was Festivus, there was New Year's, right? And so people were thinking about being with their families. People were thinking about gifting things to their families. Were thinking about big meals if they could have them, right? And so when there was debate about stimulus checks or emergency funds that went to American families, that is what people wanted to talk about. So our messaging shifted from COVID and who could best lead us through this moment to Mitch better have my money, right? And Mitch was Mitch McConnell. And we saw that Republicans in the Senate were holding up this economic relief that Americans so desperately needed. And what happened? We were successful. Warnock and Ossoff were elected, and 80% of American households received some sort of economic relief because Georgia voters showed up and voted 9 weeks later. And the reason that happened, the reason that we were able, through a brutal election cycle, through Thanksgiving, Christmas, Hanukkah, Kwanzaa, New Year's in the South, where people want to be with their families, we were able to get people to come back, an unprecedented number of people to come back and vote again, because we are constantly studying what people care about. We're constantly studying how we talk about things. They would tell us that we shouldn't talk about voter suppression, that it had a demotivational impact, that when we talked about voter suppression, it made people think that there was nothing that you could do. They're going to steal it anyway. What's the point? And what we learned is that you have to talk about voter suppression, but what you also have to do is let people know how they can overcome it, how they can combat it. That when we think about all of our messaging for 2022 and actually 2021, we have found two important frames. And one is information and the other one is power. That those have been by and large head and shoulders above any other messages or message framing that we've used. Information, meaning that people see us as credible sources of information, that they can come to our social media, that they can come to our staff and our organizers, to our volunteers, and get the real deal, nonpartisan information about what they need to know about what's happening in this moment. And it's incredibly important because we are living in an age of misinformation and disinformation, where bad actors, incredibly resourced bad actors, are poisoning our information wells. And when 90% of Gen Z got their information about elections from social media, we cannot see that territory, right? And power. Power has been one of our most effective message frames. And here's why. Because letting people know that they can, their act, their contribution can change our material circumstances. That when we work together, that we are more powerful than we can imagine. And now we continue to build on top of that. Again, the folks who were 17 and a half and just turned 18, who were born in 2002, and voted for the first time in the 2020 elections. They delivered not only an American president, the first woman of color vice president, but again, saw to it that 80% of American households got the much needed emergency financial relief that they needed. And so that stuff does not happen in October. It doesn't happen in September before a really sexy election. That is the work that we do year round to hold up the sky and to hold up our democracy and our democratic infrastructure.
All right, Nse. So I have another, yes, I have another question here. Given the recent defeat in the Senate of the John Lewis Voting Rights Act and the Freedom to Vote Act, what can be done to continue the fight and do the work to protect the voting rights of communities of color and combat voter suppression policies and laws being passed in states across the country?
Right. Well, I'll let you know a couple of things that we're doing. One, I have maintained that if they can have 50 votes, more than 50 votes to try to get rid of the Affordable Care Act, then we can certainly have more than one vote to try to preserve the Constitution and American democracy. And so that one failure is but a blip on the radar that there's nothing precluding us from bringing back a rules change vote. There's nothing precluding us from bringing back the John Lewis Voting Rights Act and the Freedom to Vote Act on the bill. So that's number one. Number two is that we have been working really hard to now connect voting rights to the things that Americans and Georgians have told us that they want to win. So we are talking about student loan debt forgiveness and educational debt forgiveness as a voting rights issue, right? That it is possible, it is very likely, sadly, that Roe versus Wade might not be the law of the land by the end of this year, right? And so when we think about bodily autonomy and access to healthcare, including reproductive healthcare, it is the same people that are attacking our healthcare that are attacking our voting rights. And so doing more work to connect those dots for people that are prepared to turn up when Roe goes down, right? Making sure that they know and understand that voting rights is essential. I point to our now asterisk governor, Brian Kemp, that when he ran for governor in 2018, he did not mention abortion once. Not once at all. But when the legislative session started in 2019, they had a governing majority. They had a governing trifecta. They had everything that they needed in order to strip us of our rights. And so without ceremony, without serious debate, they banned abortion in Georgia. Now it failed, or it was overturned by the 11th Circuit, by a federal court, but they also passed language that said that as soon as Roe versus Wade is no longer the law of the land, then abortion is automatically outlawed in Georgia, right? And so thinking about all of our elections and thinking about and doing a power analysis and again, connecting the fight for voting rights with fighting for all of the rights that we enjoy as Americans and want to hold on to and want to hold the line for. I think the last thing is that, you know, the November 22 midterms provide us with an opportunity to shuffle the pieces that are on the chessboard, right? That there is, so I talked about 400 anti-voting bills that have been introduced in 49 out of our 50 states, but 19 states have passed some version of their anti-voting bills, including my state of Georgia. And what that means is that it could possibly be chaotic after the November elections if those, because the Republicans have given themselves, and and I want to flag that New Georgia Project is a nonpartisan organization, and aggressively so, and we aggressively defend our nonpartisan status. Now, Ense Ufat is a naturalized American citizen. I became a US citizen my senior year in high school. And so all of the rights and responsibilities that are afforded to me as a citizen, including my First Amendment rights, I defend them aggressively. And so I use Republican as a descriptor, right? To say that Republicans have given themselves the tools that they need to overcome or overturn the results of elections that they don't like. And so we could find ourselves in a chaotic situation in at least 19 states if we do not have overwhelming participation in our November elections. And so that is one of the things that we are doing to try to hold the line while we work to get a new Secretary of State, while we work to get a new governor, while we work to get a new legislature that will overturn Senate Bill 202, we will make sure that Georgians understand the critical importance of this moment and in the November 22 midterms, and they show up in overwhelming numbers so that we can at least try to make sure that the will of the people is reflected in the results of this November's elections. So those are the things that we're doing. But I can also talk about more.
Actually, we had a question wanting to hear more about your mother. How did your mother inspire you to persist no matter what the obstacle?
I love this question. And Mama Ufat would love it too, because, you know, she takes claim for all of our collective victories, as she should. I'm the only daughter of a Nigerian poet and a pastor. And so my mom's a poet. And also a counselor. My mother was a young wife and young mother who came to a country that wasn't her own. My parents divorced when I was 13 years old. And so my mom raised myself and my brothers in Atlanta. My mom worked 3 jobs to take care of us. And when it looked like I was going to continue to be a successful student, it dawned on us that we weren't going to be able to pay for college. And so one of the things that we decided was that it was time for my mom and I to become citizens. And so again, that's when she got a 3rd job to hire an immigration attorney. And I was responsible for preparing us for the citizenship exam, right? And so my mother's sort of influence on my life and my career is one of sort of sacrifice, or not even really sacrifice. She's powered by love, right? The love that she has for us makes her do incredible things, makes her sacrifice. And so I think that I get angry a lot when I look at injustice, when I look at hypocrisy. And anger is also a useful power source, but it burns out. It burns hot and it burns out quick. That I have found that when we power our campaigns by love, when we power our actions by love, that it is a renewable resource. It's a well that I can keep going back to. When we talk about the Voting Rights Act failed, the rules change failed, so we couldn't get a real vote on Voting Rights Act, et cetera, et cetera. I think that, again, folks thought that, well, we'll just take our toys and go home. Absolutely not, right? That the love that I have for myself and my community and my family, the America that I have that's in my mind, right? Only at this point that I would like to be our reality one day. I love my people so much that I'm gonna stay on the battlefield. And that absolutely is a lesson that I have learned by being Mfon Ufat's child.
Excellent. I want to be cognizant of everyone's time and move on with our program. I want to thank you so much, Ense, for all of this amazing knowledge and inspiration. And I mean, I'm just so full right now, just listening to you. So I'm so grateful for you and your work. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me.